Hi from the Blue Room, it's Neysa. So glad you guys are here today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about my faith foundation that led into my faith formation. So I guess we all start with the baptism, and I was baptized, I was probably two-ish, maybe three, into the Lutheran Church in Michigan here, which is where I was born. Um, Went to Sunday school. I remember it because a bus came and picked me up at the end of my driveway, which I thought was the coolest thing ever because I got to ride the bus on Sundays even before I was in kindergarten, so that was super cool. Um, my neighbor on the one side, best friend, we had a little bridge between the ditch and between our properties, so we could always go to each other's houses, rain or shine. Um, Her family was very religious. They didn't go to our church, but still, religion was a big part of their lives. And then my neighbors on the other side were actually my godparents. So there was like a religious undercurrent in our lives at the time. And then I, in addition to remembering going to Sunday school, though I don't remember content at all, I remember very clearly when I was little, probably 5 or 6, my dad read me bedtime stories, and they were children's Bible stories. So I got like the highlight reel. So like I learned about God and Jesus and Moses and Noah's Ark and the typical little kid Bible stories, right? And then fast forward to, I know for sure I was 6, and my father's father died, so my grandpa died. And I was heartsick because he was my grandpa. And I remember my dad telling me that the reason people died, well, because I had asked, why do people die? And he said that the reason people die is because Adam and Eve ate the apple when they weren't supposed to in the Garden of Eden, and as a punishment, now people die. So that was the very non-theological effort to be child-friendly when talking about death. And I remember from that moment being so mad at Adam and Eve. I remember crying and saying, I hate them, I hate them. If they had just listened, Grandpa would be alive. Total lack of understanding, and my poor dad, who's grieving the loss of his own father, is dealing with this precocious 6-year-old who needs to know all of the information all of the time right away. So, yeah, I remember those like faith moments, faith foundation moments. And then when I turned 8, I turned 8 in April, and then that October, packed up everything we owned and we moved to Colorado. And that is a time I like to call the great pause in my faith formation, because where we lived, and evidently my parents' lives, or whatever the case may be, I mean, again, I was only 8 years old, there was zero religious education going on. I don't remember ever going to church in Colorado. I don't remember that any of my friends were particularly religious. That just all ended. And then I moved to Utah, which, hello, deep into the pool for religion, especially if you're not really religious or Mormon. In fact, when we moved to Utah, one of the very first things I was asked on my first day of school was, oh, are you Mormon? And I'm like, I don't know what that word means. I just had no idea. I was so ill prepared to be one of the only non-Mormon kids in my school at the time. But we moved there with the influx of a lot of outsiders because they were building a coal-fired power plant. So there was a lot of construction families that came in and stuff. It wasn't necessarily always a warm welcome. However, I was very fortunate and did meet some very lovely people right off the rip, who I still consider friends to this day, even though I'm a shitty friend and I don't talk to people all of the time. Like, I'm a low-maintenance friend, right? Give me a wave on Facebook so I know that, you know that I exist, and I'll probably comment on some of your kids' pictures, and then, yeah, that's pretty good for me. I'm not great at keeping in touch long distance, and again, because I suck. But I digress. So I had a couple of good friends from 12 until I was 18 and left Utah, who were shining examples of what someone who believes in their faith is. Not necessarily because I was interested in that faith. In fact, I did have some interest early on, but a lot of the times when I would talk to people who were supposed to be, what a mess, who were supposed to be educating me about the religion, I would find that the answer was all too often, you'll find this out after you become Mormon, or you'll find this out after you get baptized. And I didn't like the idea that there were mysteries, but they weren't really mysteries. It was more of secrets, right? And I learned the difference when I was becoming Catholic. Anyways, I digress. So, but this one friend in particular, Jackie, she shared her testimony with me on more than one occasion. I went to girls' camp with her. I went to church with her a lot. Faith was a large part of their life. Their family um, seemed to have like this inner peace. She had like this inner peace and like this comfort and knowledge that I just couldn't get. Like, and that's faith, right? That's faith. That's the, you have that, but no one can really see it. But I knew there was something, right? I wanted to believe in something like she believed, but I couldn't believe in the same thing she believed in. I tried a couple of times, and I just couldn't. Um, but she's a lovely, lovely soul, and honestly, she was probably one of the big milestones in my youthful faith journey. She knew that I felt challenged, sometimes threatened by her church, or not really her church, but her religion overall. Sometimes, if I went to another friend's house, their parents were like very either weird about the fact that I wasn't Mormon or took it as a challenge to try to convince me why I should be. Um, there were a lot of things that I loved about that community. There were just as many things that I didn't like. Like it was a small town, had one stoplight, no fast food places, like chain fast food places, right? There was like Bennett's Drive-In, which was a family-owned little burger shop that had the best Piccadilly's ever. And then back when I was there, it was like Barry's Drive-In, that was one of my very first jobs, and it was super fun. There was a 7-Eleven, a couple of grocery stores, a couple of bars, which didn't factor in to me because I was a kid. But there wasn't like a big city around us to where you could just like, oh, I'm gonna run into town and go do like go to the mall or go to an arcade or go to a specialist, a medical specialist of some sort. Like I had braces for most of my high school career, and an orthodontist from another town came to our town once a month and then saw like all of the kids in town. It's just bizarre to me. But so there were a lot of things that I didn't enjoy. I felt like I was in a fishbowl. I got told on all the time. Like, if I was out on Main Street screwing around, which I normally was because that's what you did. You drag Main, right? Or you cruise Main, which is you go to one end, do a U-turn, flip, bitch, come back, do a U-turn again. That was Friday night entertainment, right? So, I remember on many occasions coming home and my dad going, yeah, so-and-so's dad called and said he saw you at the Bennett's end of Main Street and you were doing this. And I was like, oh, for real? Like, seriously, mind your business. But anyway, looking back now, what a safe community, right? Like, it was nothing for me to, geez, we rode our bikes everywhere. We walked everywhere. We hung out all the time, just out. Like, no one had to worry because somebody's parents were watching you. And this was as teenagers, right? So, once we could drive, that's a whole nother series for a whole nother day. Anyways, I digress. Yet again, so sorry. But the one thing that I really, and even now, to this day, still talk about, the one factor with the Mormon church that impressed me so much, and I understand that I was in Utah, and Utah Mormons are sometimes a little bit different than, like, say, Michigan Mormons are, just by sheer quantity and quality, right? But family home evening was such an important thing for, like, all of my friends. Even my boyfriend's families did it. And it's like where they have a religious lesson, they pray, they play games, they have snacks, but it's the whole family. And the one thing about living in Delta is it was so family-centered, right? It was, at least from my perspective as a younger person, you know, and then looking back, what a great place to raise a kid because it was family-focused. Everything was family-focused. Big into the Boy Scouts, and like the different wards would have like talent shows, and you would go to another ward's talent show, and prom was like what you would see 20 years prior to my prom. Like, it was just like parents come to the beginning of prom, and like I got to dance with my dad at my junior prom, and then they all leave, and then you have your regular prom, right? But it's family. Yeah, it was really cool. It was all the secret stuff that I couldn't like be down for. And secret to the point where I remember once I wanted really badly to read this book that was written by an excommunicated Mormon person. Because maybe it's got the answers I'm looking for. Like, what do they do in the temple right before you get married? So anyways, a lot of questions. Baptism for the dead. Total lack of understanding at the time. And now just total disbelief. But anyways, so I had to go to Nevada to get this book. So I drove myself across the state line, found the book, read the book, and was like, oh, yeah. And granted, it was one man's opinion or one man's experience, but it was enough for me to go, I'm out. So, turned 18, screwed around trying to figure out if I was going to go to college or not. I was not cut out to be a college student at 18 years old. Why? Because I was completely immature. I was so freaking homesick, but yet didn't want to be home. So, yeah, I just was not ready, and I really didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. So anyways, I eventually made it back to Michigan. Still 18 years old. It's a long year. So I come back to Michigan. Wow, this is such a long story. This really is a long story. So once I get back to Michigan, I get married, have kids, husband dies, put myself through nursing school, fast forward, work in the ER, work in hospice, saw some stuff, asked some questions, no one would answer me. Fast forward even farther, meet my current husband, and my forever husband, P.S., by the way, not doing that ever again. He's the one. He's the only. See how this video goes.